we are screen sharing. And yes, we are recording this for purposes of just having the record, but also being able to share this on the teacher website for those who could not attend this evening. They can see the presentation in full, as well as for those of you who may have not been to the website, everything we're presenting tonight, including some of the forms and other ways to participate, will be all on the website. So with that being said, again, the agenda for this evening is pretty robust. We're going to spend just a little bit of time going through some of the work. And if you've been to the previous two beneficiary consultation meetings, this is really a synthesis of some of that work, but we're going to spend enough time for those who maybe this is your first time here this evening to at least understand what we've been working on and where is this va'a, no pun intended, relative to the canoe clubs and the presence of canoe culture there in Malama Cultural Park. But where this va'a is actually going with the preparation of the spiritual area plan. And then really we want the heart of our conversation this evening is going to be on items 6 and 7 as shown on the screen. We really want to start talking about how we're starting to think about these planning areas within the park and some of the strategies that we see based upon a lot of input that folks like yourself have participated in past meetings, guiding our thought process and where we think we need to go. Just a few reminders on meeting Kuleana. Again, this is meant to be a conversation, but as in the virtual world, just trying to find the best way to still interact with each other. We've been in this virtual space for over a year and a half. So we're just asking people to be respectful of whoever's talking. Cody tonight will play the role of a facilitator. And again, we're going to be encouraging folks to use the chat, using the raise hand function and other things. And of course, when addressing other participants, as shared in the pule, being able to, aloha aku, aloha mai, aloha kikahi kikahi, in that spirit to treat others with respect. And for this evening, if there's any points of discussion that we don't agree, just recognizing we all have different mana'o and different perspectives, and that's totally fine. And that we're actually here to just kind of share in that diversity of perspective to hopefully, through pule and through conversation, find the best path forward that really keeps Aina in front of mind and the community as well. So, and again, encouraging everyone to speak or to share as they see fit. Oh, and I want to recognize Shelly here is on. Shelly Carrera is here from the department. So welcome, Shelly. Thank you for being here. So how to share your input. Again, as I mentioned, you can use the type into the chat box using the raise hand function. There's going to be different sections. We're going to have a very, very interactive section about halfway through, but feel free to put questions into the chat box. And as we go through them, and I'm not sure if anyone's on the phone this evening, but what we'll try and do is we'll take those who have put questions or comments in the chat box first, and then those who maybe have a raised hand or question, we'll take those second. And then if anyone's on a phone only option this evening, if you have any mana'o to share, we'll be sure to try and address those on the phone. So bear with us as we try to keep all of this sorted together. And tonight, for purposes of trying to take attendance as well as trying to solicit some of your mana'o in writing, we are using Google Forms. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Google Forms, it's basically another way, like a survey. It's a series of questions that you'll see posted. Cody, I think you're gonna probably put this into the chat box for us if you haven't done so already. Part of my screen is cut off, so I actually can't see the chat box right now. But please, click on the link that's in the chat box here, and you'll see a series of questions that first comes up to ask you to enter your name, a contact email, an address for homestead affiliation, and beneficiary status. This just helps us understand who is with us this evening and who is participating with the questions at hand. And I think that's pretty straightforward. The series of questions with responses in lifetime by all participants. And again, these responses will become part of the consultation report. So of course, before we dive into the essence of Malama Cultural Park, just taking a really quick moment and, still always honoring our ali'i and just paying respect to Prince Jonah Kuhia Kalaniana Ole. And I was able to kind of through a quick review of things I had in archives. There's a chant that was composed by, all we know her name is to be Mrs. Kikahana, and it's called Himele no Kalaniana Ole. And there's a couple of chants in Mele that are entitled Himele no Kalaniana Ole for the prince. What I liked about this particular chant line, there's 3 lines that go, Ipono no ho makaina na, oni pa'a ka pono I ko poho lima, e nawewe ole Hawaiine. And Tutu Kabena translates it, for the good of your fellow makaina na, righteousness is held steadfast in your palm, so Hawaii does not falter. And you could say, even though tonight's conversation, we're not focusing necessarily on homesteading, I think the idea that this park is one, I think in many of your voices, is a very significant and important place. It's a wahipana, it's a wahikupuna, it's a place where children have grown up and learned the importance of being connected to a place, and that part of this effort actually involves the stewardship of our resources that are so vital, as well as maintaining and building community. And that's why we're here today to talk on this conversation. So let's get into it. So Malama Cultural Park, this picture just kind of set the tone, looking from your left to right, just sort of synopsis of what the park looked like over a course of time. The picture on the far left was taken in 1909 from D.B. Curtis, and it shows in the foreground, you still can see Malama platform, and in the back there was the original Kalaika Manu Church. In January 2018, Department of Hawaiian Homelands acquired and designated the park as a special district under its land use designation. And the land was actually accepted by DHHL as part of the Act 14 settlement, mainly because it would provide both cultural and recreational opportunities in a centralized location, as well to help maintain a presence and access to the shoreline. So what you see here is just, again, recognizing that today we've inherited the platform more as a quote unquote archaeological cultural site, and there's opportunities there in that to do things like restoration and reconnect to this important wahi, as well as many people know the park for its connection to canoe paddling and to the culture therein. So this plan really tries to be cognizant of past, present, and the future yet to come. The special area plan, for those who may not know, again, I'm going to spend this really brief time on here. They help to focus on areas that are important to DHHL that require some special attention, usually because there's opportunities and/or constraints on the AINA. Could be natural man-made hazards. It could be open space. It could be important green space. In this case, cultural space, natural resource space. And the purpose of the assigned land use is to really address the opportunities identified with specific planning in mind. There's actually 2 other special area plans. This would be the 3rd here for the department. And in terms of doing a special area plan, we try to focus on a couple of things. One is how to guide the issuance of opportunities for land disposition for non-homesteading use, looking at abilities to leverage the resources and find long-term collaborators, and to develop goals and strategies through beneficiary consultation to help guide the effective management and care for this place, and also to make sure we align with both the Molokai Island Plan and the regional plan and any other applicable plans. So for some of you who have attended our previous meeting, you've seen this figure before. Excuse me, you've seen this figure before. And it's really a culmination of the information we've gathered to date. Some of our work is just to gather different sources of data and trying to understand the landscape here. Pardon me, I'm going to turn my head over to this other screen so I can see closely, so I'm going to drift off the camera. But what I really want to emphasize is, we try to understand both the natural resources here with the coastline, the wetland system, and the connection therein, recognizing that the water flows from the upper portions of the Ahupua'a. We do have in orange these cultural sites or historic sites that have been identified, as well as this cultural layer in this orange outline. And trying to understand movements of floods, flood zones, how water would move during coastal flooding, understanding sea level rise, inundation, understanding where existing utilities lie, where are points of access, and all of these things put together is sort of our culmination of at least a physical opportunities and constraints map. And happy to come back to this map if some people have questions. But using this information, excuse me, and through a series of meetings we've held, the first being actually over a year ago, July 29, 2020, and through a series of 2 consultation meetings and 1 leadership meeting, excuse me, in September, and a series of small group meetings over the last year. The intention there is just to kind of, again, let's follow out, talking story, getting different perspectives, and originally, just to share, the way this scope was written, the intention was always to be on island, having these conversations in person. And of course, as we all know, COVID has changed many of our lives in different ways and or another, and especially in the way we communicate with each other, using this virtual platform, this virtual meeting room to have a conversation. But that being said, we try our best to be as open and transparent and inclusive as possible, and we continue to hope to do that through the course of the rest of this planning process. For this particular meeting, we did send out mailers to Molokai lessees, applicants, and applicants with Molokai zip codes, excuse me. So over 900 postcards were mailed out to individuals. And out of those conversations, these are some of the high-level themes that came out of the Kuka and Vala'au. Issues like park governance, talking about cultural resources and the care of those resources, our mo'omeheu, our koehana, and how to effectively steward those resources and create, again, a sense of responsibility to care for them, as well as our natural resources, concerns about appropriate waste management to make sure that Opala is taken care of. We do have some existing facilities, building structures on site, how to maintain and care for those things to ensure the park is safe and secure. Issues on parking and access, and last but surely not least is the conversation as to what are the implications about sea level rise, and we'll get into some of that later on in the presentation. So that being said, we want to get into this heart of the management goals. But maybe before I do that, are there any preliminary questions to what I shared yet? And I'm going to depend upon Cody to be my eyes and Janice. Okay. I'm going to hold on more then, because this is where we get into like the new stuff. So in the various conversations we've had and looking at other good models of planning, we think that relative to the park and the care of these resources, there's 5, I think, key management goals that come out of this. The first is to maintain the park to serve as a special place for the community and to ensure that it's accessible in many ways across generations, as I showed in those 3 pictures going from past, present, future. This should be a place that provides a continuous means of connection, of relationship for our keiki and those yet unborn. The second goal is to protect, restore, and maintain habitat for the area's flora and fauna, to care for those shoreline resources, those resources in the wetlands, and to this Malama those resources. And third is to protect and perpetuate both the ike, the knowledge, the resources, and the practices that continue to have a presence within the park and along the shoreline and in the kai. And fourth, to talk about what are those opportunities, if any, to generate community economic development. Past planning efforts for the park, for those of you who may have been part of those conversations, looked at everything from trying to create like an arts market in some of the more Malka side of the park, as well as some recent conversations about looking for maybe possibility of doing a farmers market and other kinds of things where we actually can be supportive of the local community to help generate financial income. And last, but again, surely not least here is, what are those opportunities, either through the science and study and just really exploration of the natural resources and the cultural resources to create Aina-based educational programs. So these are sort of the 5, sort of intersecting points. We show it kind of in a star pattern here. It's try to also be mindful, seek things in balance as much as we can. And so tonight, as part of our conversation, which you'll see here shortly, we're going to sort of pause and kind of go through different areas of the park and try to have conversations. And so, Cody, if you haven't done so already, please share the goals in the chat, because when I move off this slide, if you need to reference what was shared here is the 5 goals, you can look in the chat and see them. So that's sort of where we are to date, and where we are now, just kind of a quick summary of the process to date, as I showed you, all these meetings we've had in the past. We are here, and tonight we actually are here, this beneficiary consultation number 3. And so as you can see, there's been a lot of work that's moved forward, and the hope and intention is coming out of tonight's meeting, we gather some good information that we actually get into the phase of documentation, trying to summarize all this information, try to summarize where we think the strategy of management should go and ought to go. And the intentionality there is once we have a draft, we would like to provide an informational only briefing to Hawaiian Homes Commission, and we mark it as winter 2022. We're looking more like probably in the lines of a January timeframe, maybe February, but we'll put winter here as a placeholder. And then based upon what the commission sort of advises us and gives us input on, we'll come back out for a final round of small group meetings to then kind of share what we heard, what we learned, some of the outstanding questions that people may have on how is this all going to work, and what if I want to do this, and what if my organization has an interest in this. We hope in the next month or two that we can get really clear. We can provide clarity and as well as receive clarity based upon what's shared this evening. And then the hope and intention is that by the spring we actually have a sort of a pre-final draft plan, that we actually do one last round of a meeting like this where we share that in full with everyone. And, hopefully the plan speaks to everyone's heart, that then we would aim to present in the spring 2022 to commission for approval. And in our minds, we try to put that in a time frame of about April, with the idea that if the commission maybe goes back to in-person meetings, that April-May timeframe has been traditionally when commission has come to Molokai. So we were hoping that possibly this plan would be approved on island, with the Molokai community being able to hear and participate in that discussion. So those details will be shared and finalized as we roll into 2022. So, again, I'm probably preaching to the proverbial choir here. This part probably needs not a lot of explanation, but when we look at Hawaiian management models, it's always from this idea of Ahupua'a context, and herein, right, there's a unique realization, and I really love this aerial shot, that although we're really focusing on the park here, is to realize that there's this interconnection that starts from the Vaokua to the Waolani, to down through the valleys to the near shorelines, the coastal waters, and really out and into the near shore fisheries and out into the depths of the Kai. This is all one interactive, organic, ancestral space and place. And just even having the presence of that mindset, I think, is really, really important. And as we talked amongst these meetings we've had with some of you, what's really come through as some of the key values is this sense of pilina, connection to place, and that really the importance of ensuring the succession or the care of this place across generations is something that's really come through. So as such, when we start to then really hone in on the zones or on the park itself, it became, at least for us, it probably made sense to think about the park in its entirety and its connection to the larger Ahupua'a, but for this conversation this evening, to really hone in on what we're calling these park management zones. And to be clear, this is not to indicate like a boundary of a lease or anything like that. These are just polygon shapes that kind of made sense to us for this conversation, to say, okay, well, we really kind of see 5 zones. The first, starting from the Mokai side, is the area, we call it the Canoe Area. You can also call it the coastal area. It's where we do have, the 2 canoe clubs, Molokai Canoe Club and Wa'akapai Mua Canoe Club, have a presence there. That's where a lot of that connection, relationship building of community, the teaching, happens through the daily interactions of practice, through the competitions, and really fostering that idea of community. The second area is to pay respect to the natural resources in the wetland area. The third is to focus on Malama platform, specifically. And then fourth is this much larger area, which has many questions, but I think also there are opportunities. And then the fifth area, even though one may ask, well, why are we looking at sort of parking and access? Well, there's some I think, opportunities and questions here that come through that. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you through each of these zones and share some of the takeaways that we've gathered through this process. And what you see here at the end of each of the slides here I'm about to show you are 3 questions, and the questions are essentially the same for each of the zone. And this is where we're going to make this a little bit, hopefully, more interactive. So as I present the information, I do welcome folks to then start to ask questions on the chat, raise your hand, as well as use that form that I mentioned there in Google, the Google Forms. So that being said, let's start here with zone 1. Wait, pardon me. Okay, so the existing conditions for zone 1 in the Canoe area is this sandy beach area where Wa'akapai Mua and Molokai canoe clubs operate. Canoe clubs currently maintain existing facilities and keep their canoes and care for the grounds and Malama this place. In the nearshore water, Grilla ogle often accumulates on the beach sand, which is an invasive species. And there is a small staircase that provides some pedestrian access from Kaunakakai Place. So the main issues or opportunities here for management is how do we continue to perpetuate the canoe culture for present and future generations? How do we address issues such as the care of the space, dealing with trash, as we understand some trespassing, security, invasive species, and erosion. And the threats that could have an impact to this place are coastal erosion from storm surge, from other storm events. Again, as we mentioned too, this pending threat of sea level rise, as we're starting to see this really become a reality in some of our island communities. Going back a step to the threats, oil drip from cars parking on the beach, right? Cars do access from one side here along to the shoreline, and just the idea of like, how do we maintain and care for the island capacity? And do we then need to sort of maintain and control access to the beach to just ensure that we're not inadvertently causing damage to the environment? And last, litter and vandalism. So the DHHL management action at hand is, the thought is to form an agreement, and we're actually going to share some ideas about what these agreements could or would look like underneath DHHL's disposition system. But to form an agreement with a qualified nonprofit organization, and we'll kind of speak to what we think the qualifications of a nonprofit organization could or should be. We'd like to hear from you too, what you think, and being able to being able to focus on the cultural importance of Hawaiian canoe culture, and that perhaps the management strategy could be an initial right of entry to longer term management of the area. And we can share in more detail as to what our thoughts are behind that. What you see also is a presentation of future actions. So what we try to do is like, okay, what's the bare minimum of activity that needs to take place on the site? So in terms of addressing some of these issues, it could be, well, first and foremost, maintain the continued use of the canoe facilities for canoe practice. But in terms of the care of the aina and the resources, weed whacking around canoe facilities and the collection of litter. I mean, that's sort of the bare minimal. And then in terms of maintenance and care, it could be, as we understand the canoe clubs right now, they do Malama both the platform and the wetlands. So it could be formalizing the idea of how do we support the removal of invasive species, and maybe therein too, how we promote the restoration of native species, maintaining the rubbish bins, maybe having a bin that's on site, someone has to take care of that, take the rubbish away, and then how to effectively think about erosion mitigation. Some of you may be participating in another study from Molokai that's dealing with erosion mitigation management, and we may want to think about how to bring some of those ideas into this planning process here. And then the third is really sort of would be the sort of the most involved, improving existing and or constructing new canoe facilities to meet, it says future needs, but I'd say to meet current and future needs. So with these thoughts in mind, the questions we wanted to pose this evening and ask you now and hopefully get some feedback is, what kind of activities do you think should occur in this zone area, first and foremost? What skills and experience do you think a future community partner should possess to be sort of the kia'i, if you will, the steward and caretaker of this kuleana. And what do you think future community partners would need to do in terms of activities and uses to make sure that this zone is cared for in the best way possible? So let me pause there and open the floor for conversation. And Cody, if there's any feedback in the chat, or if anyone wants to provide comment, any thoughts? I'm going down the list too.
I'm not quite sure what is meant by what kind of activities should occur in this zone.
So it could be, I don't want to put words in people's mouths. So I think, like, yeah, we want to continue the practice of what the canoe clubs are doing now. We've heard, for example, I think from one of the canoe clubs, they would like to have a storage facility here on site. We want to be sure that what is currently occurring on the property can continue. So I think, like, hopefully, whether it's yes, we want to continue practicing there, we want to continue teaching there. I think we've heard in one or two conversations that when appropriate, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Visitors are welcome here, and sometimes visitors are taken out on a canoe for a ride. So just, I think, whatever you guys think needs to be embraced there as part of the activities and uses. Would you want to see, I'm just kind of talking in draft here, picnic tables and barbecue pits? Probably not, I'm guessing, because we've never heard that. So anyway, I'll shush because I really want to listen to you folks, but that's sort of the idea that we're getting to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like Cora has her hand raised.
I just wanted to just share that the county office, recreation, they've closed the gym area. And so I would like to see more activities that could offer youths and teens. And I know that the canoe club have the teens and middle school age, but even younger, I'm not sure if they provide, I'm really not sure, but I wanted to just put that on the table. I would like to see barbecues and some tables, and vegetation. I did want to share that part of Ahanui, we, as far as landscape and impacts, there are certain type of plants that they have suggested that would help with the impacts of erosion, and also some plants that may help with fire prevention as well. So I just wanted to put it out there. And maybe even the idea for money, a farmer's market would be a bad idea, but even those bike that they could rent, about the insurance. But I thought that would be such a nice place to ride a bike down to the wharf, and some sort of bike path. Anyway, that's just my manao. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cora. And I think some of the things you're speaking to, would make sense perhaps in one of the other zones. Again, we're going to show 5 slides for each of the zones here. So if I can maybe just hone in, like, specific activities.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
No, first of all, I want to apologize. Kalamai, totally old age status. Went
No
totally
worries.
go point out on you and went forget about the, I don't know, all day I was talking about it with everybody, forget the meeting, I'm going to say the pule, blah, 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 and then I forgot. So, very embarrassing, Kalamai.
My hope.
But, we've been talking about this for, I feel like you're like one of my old friends already because we've been together for so long. And someday I want to stop meeting like this, but
Yep.
over and over we
Close,
said
close.
for this zone, we wanted to leave it the Canoe Area, mainly because we have nowhere else to go.
Yep.
Nowhere. People have other places to barbecue, go picnic, but we have nowhere else to go to hold our canoe practices and to run the canoe seasons. And the canoe season is open unless we're in a pandemic, but normally the canoe season is open to all age groups from 10 to 80 if they can still hold a paddle. So, and we've never really refused anybody from the club. Like any club, there's fees and stuff, but we've even have a scholarship thing in place for real hardship. I mean, we have really tried hard to be inclusive rather than exclusive. And we see other activities on there besides the canoe club. We see people running on the beach, walking their dogs, gathering, limu, going out for a swim right from the beach, over there, taking their kids to go swimming because it's a nice, accessible place that's safe. So, the canoe clubs have a presence there, a real visible, big presence there, but we don't use it exclusively. And we're not the kind, get out of here, you don't belong to our club, so, but really, we're there because pretty much we have nowhere else to go. I mean, I can paddle here from my house, and I do, but I wait for the high tide. I couldn't run a club from here and be on a schedule and run regular practices and stuff. I would, I would have my club here if I could. That would be a big problem solver, but cannot. We really have tried hard to look at other places. And I know I've told you guys this before, but there really is nowhere else to go.
And I think I thank you. I think we really want to honor that sentiment. And of course, as this is a beneficiary consultation meeting, we also want to be sure we hear from as many people as possible to sort of fortify that. But I think the sentiment and what we've heard even from folks that are not necessarily immediate part of the canoe club is they see the value of maintaining that presence there too. So I think that's been a consistent message. And really tonight, hopefully we just make this whole pot and we move on to the document.
And our storage shed that we have, it's small, it's not permanent, it's totally mobile. It just holds the immediate equipment that we need there, the paddles, the rigging, stuff like that. It's not a clubhouse where we go inside there and, suck them up and make luau. It really is an equipment shed that needs to be close by so we can run our practices and stuff. Where we park, right next, that little parking area over there, I know there's mentioned earlier about like oil leaks and stuff, but where do people park in Oahu at Kailua Beach or at Waimanalo or at Makapu? I mean, you can tell everybody they cannot park it anymore because of car leaks or Haleiwa or, Kanaha in Maui, all those spaces, people park close to the beach. If you got an oil leak that bad, you should really go take care of your car. You shouldn't even be driving to the site.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, let's be sensible here. And what about all the cars driving down to the wharf and all the guys running their engine when they come in from fishing right in the water and washing their boat down right there? To me, that's worse. You know what I mean?
That's all fair. That's all fair. So we just wanted to pose the questions and thank you for the feedback here.
But the other thing too is if they want we have trash cans there, we empty them. And we've seen people throw away rubbish right next to the trash can on the ground. And so the other thing is, you're gonna put barbecue things in there, picnic tables. Who's gonna take care of it? So far, what I've seen is not the people. Right. They come and they use, but they don't take care. And so if you're gonna ask for that kind of stuff, please identify to me who's gonna come down there, empty that trash can, and clean up that barbecue place. And be responsible for all that.
I think that's what we're asking tonight. So, so I guess cut to the chase, right? We're trying to formalize the presence of the canoe clubs right through this process. I guess the question would be for the canoe clubs, would you be willing, as stewards of this area, recognizing there's probably non-canoe people that come here, like you mentioned, utilizing space. If we had bins there, whether it's a form of bin, like would that be something you folks would be okay to take care of?
We provide a bin.
Yeah. So I know you guys
We
already
gotta
do.
teach
So,
them how to
but,
use it. We even go empty them.
right,
You
right.
know, we want our place clean.
Understood.
Yeah. So to me, when people make their wish list and ask for these things, please keep in mind that somebody has to maintain that.
Right, right. For the sake of, I'm sorry, I didn't cut in here, but for the sake of time, because we do have a lot of information.
Yeah, sorry.
No. This is good stuff. Thank you. Cody, I see we have, I think, a couple more people. I'm gonna leave it to you to identify who should speak next.
Sure, I think Bridget had her hand up next, and then Liko was next, and we also have some comments coming in the chat.
Aloha. Takes a
Aloha.
while to unmute, unvideo, and all of that. But mahalo for having this presentation, and Kavika, mahalo for the history and all that information. But I am, my suggestion would just keep the Canoe area, It's historically, it's been there. I mean, to me, that it's been there for generations. Our kids grew up there. So, and to me, it fits the bill because it's Malama Historical Park. And our canoe clubs have been there. It's so convenient to that's established already. There's a lot of space to have your, your whatever picnic areas or whatever. I think we got to plant trees over there. It'll draw people to come and sit down, and after the races, they don't have to, if they're not part of the canoe club or whatever, they can move into the bigger area. I don't know what numbers that was, but that's where your shade tree should be, and your park, your benches should be, so families can come, and enjoy that area. But right now it's so dry. I don't even know if got water over there. We should be doing that kind of stuff now, planting. So maybe when the canoe club is not using the area because of season, this would be the time. Well, maybe we can come together as a community to plant stuff and work together. But I don't know if there's water, if we have to go with buckets to water that. But I really believe that we should be thinking about, 2 years of kuka is a long time. We should be doing something that we can do now, and that would be planting trees. But I am very supportive of the canoe area to be there. They malama that place. We've used it for many other things. It's not just for paddling. So, and it's not that big of an area. It's a very small area. And to me, I wrote it, it's like the staging area for the event, which would be like the races. So that's my mana'o. Thank you very much.
Mahalo nui. Liko next.
Aloha. As far as the canoe zone, I think those of us who are and have been there all these years have been doing our part in taking care of it. And, like Penny said, we're not chasing people away. I mean, if people come and they play on the beach, they take the kids to, play on the beach, and because it's the perfect, area for young kids. Our club accepts kids as young as 5, which we put on double halls, and that's usually when we're in season. So when we're not in season, everything is then put away and care. That's when we take care of our equipment. We, bring them up to speed again for the upcoming year. So the area that we have been using all these years is perfect for the canoe, culture part of the park. I don't want to turn it into like a community area where we would have barbecues and stuff.
Right.
To me, I mean, there are like areas that can be done, maybe, in the bigger scheme, but not in the area
The canoe
where
zone.
the clubs are. Yeah.
Okay.
I think how it's been running has been fine. The only thing is, when we do care for the property, like weed eat or do whatever kind of maintenance to the area, to have, I mean, when we do have a hui that pulls together to run this whole park as far as cleaning, maintaining, and how we're actually going to run all the different zones, would be nice that everybody were to take part in, the cleaning of the area, because when my husband was alive, he took care of the mound, and now he's not here. So, that has been like, and for the past 2 years when we've been in the pandemic, so I haven't had members that could help. So, a lot of times we are available for those who need to work off their community service. They come and they work off their community service by doing whatever, kind of work we provide them with, so they can accumulate their hours of community service. But that's the only kind of, besides our members when we are in season. So it's kind of getting overgrown right now and looking pretty bad. So, it will be nice to get, the community work together with keeping it in check, basically. In the actual shore area, I think that one has been fine as how it's been working, unless somebody says something differently.
All right.
But
Mahalo.
thank you.
I'll take
Yeah.
Sybil's hand here, and then we'll jump into chat questions, and then I'm gonna sort of have us now way a little bit into the next zone here. But Sybil, please.
Hello,
Aloha, my
hi
friend.
everyone. So the activities, I just want to piggyback on Auntie Penny and Auntie Lupo about the activities that we've been doing in the zone 1. It is a small area, but understanding the canoe activities pre-pandemic, we're down there at least 7 days a week. We go into many different types of seasons, whether we're going to regatta seasons, we go to long distance seasons, and now and recreational slash. A lot of our adult members are all in one mannings, and so when we go down there, it's usually all about our equipment, getting close to the shore, getting access to going from one to the other, and the time during seasons, it's basically from the kids doing regattas all the way up to adults. I mean, we use it constantly area. And it's a thing. So the uses over there is all cultural, all canoe based, and so I don't know what the questions that you're asking on any more that you can add to that small given space. Yeah.
Yep. No, and I think
Than
that's
what is
recognized.
already, than what we already use that area for. I mean, if you're going
Understood.
to add like those picnic tables and going to be very hard, because we need access to our equipment, going
Yes.
in and out. So I just kind of wanted to lay out how the canoe clubs function within that given area, and the activities are usually, if it's not pandemic, it's a 7-day a week kind of thing, like either early morning, early evenings. So I don't want to throw other stuff out there, but
Yep.
activities and a minimal area space to work with it is gonna be very hard to add more activities in there.
So we'll totally understand, and I think we call that sentiment fully. You know, just posing the question to see if anyone has other ideas. But I think again, what we've heard consistently and constantly is the continued support of Canoe Club. I also want to say, too, you kind of broke up a little bit, so if we'll try and capture everything we have and may circle back with you in case we want to make sure we capture your ideas in full.
Kavika, Kalam, I'm sorry.
No.
Can I just jump in real quick? Sorry.
Please, Anthony, go.
I'm looking at the chat and you know, I don't know, you know, somebody mentioned earlier the stairs going down to the beach from the road. That stairs, I don't know, you know, I guess the state put in that stairs and there's no gate there. It doesn't say keep out. And the beach, all beaches in Hawaii are public. So this thing about, you know, they wish that they can go, they take the grandchildren crabbing and swimming. Yeah, you can go tomorrow. You know what I mean? People do it all the time. Those stairs give you complete access to the beach that is there. And people go swimming and crabbing there all the time. I don't know why people think they cannot.
Okay, this is a clarifying question, but good that you share that. And yes, you are correct in all that.
And then the other thing is, Bridget said something about planting trees and stuff, but we were told when the homestead first took this kuleana on, we were told to stop everything, stop building, stop planting, stop whatever, because we were trying to figure it out, right?
Right.
So stop everything, yeah, because we had talked about doing the wetland restoration. You know, we've talked your ears off about that one. So maybe people just don't understand that there's not much action going on down there right now in terms of planting and Malama and stuff because we were asked to stop. And that's why we need to come up with this plan so we can move forward. So I guess, you know, for the people that have not been at all the meetings, yeah, we have discussed all of that. And of course we want to put, you know, more plants down there and appropriate. You know, we talk about native plants all the time. I mean, that's my job, you know, and then the other thing too is the other activities that it can be used for, and LICO has graciously always made way for that is education. We've done tons of education with all the elementary schools on Molokai, and their favorite place to go down there and look at native plants and wetlands and study the ocean and invasive species is the Molokai Canoe Club. They're able, LICO has given them access to go down there, and all you gotta do is call. Like any place else, you ask permission, you know, you see if it's available. The kids go down there, they unload all their backpacks and stuff in the shack. There's tables for them to eat their lunch on. LICO opens up the water. They can go use the toilet. They can go wash their hand, whatever. And Bridget, you asked if there's water down there. There is water down there. We pay the bill. Molokai Canoe Club and Wa'akapaimua pays that water bill. Just so you guys know, you know.
Thank you, Auntie. I think, again, tonight we're trying to validate the things that are already there happening. This plan really is going to try to figure out how to apply what you guys are doing. I don't, you know, that my takeaway as a consultant is no one has seen any or saying anything different about what should be there in terms of your continued presence, active involvement in the care of the place as well as the community as a whole. I am going to nudge us along to the next zone, but I do want to pay respect to the fact there's some comments in there, and we'll try and come back to these comments during the continued discussion here. I think Ruth had asked a question. So who's going to take care of the maintenance of this park? Well, that's in essence what we're going to be getting to tonight. On the second half here is sort of defining the qualifications of a good organization, but also we want to hear from you folks too. What do you think should be the qualifications of an organization? And we're kind of hinting at it's kind of like the qualifications of the canoe clubs in terms of what they're already doing and their emphasis and how they teach and kind of kuleana they maintain there. So really, it's really amplifying the work that's being there. So if it's okay with everyone, I want to kind of now way us a little bit to the next zone, which is kind of focusing on the wetland. Again, I'm going to face away from my camera. So the existing conditions, a lot of the wetland environment is, there are species that are thriving, but there's some species that are very invasive. We actually have a very full biological study that was done by our own Miss Janice Jansen. So we have a lot of pickleweed in the area. There's also salt deposits that form in low-lying areas. Again, this is not the full story. We're just trying to give you little tidbits here. And again, the Wakapaimua Canoe Club currently cares for the wetland on a volunteer basis. So again, mahalo to Wakapaimua for taking on that kuleana. So what we see is the primary management issues, and not really issues like bad things, but like here's the things we got to focus on is the stewardship of the wetland as a resource for both ecological conservation and restoration. With that, there are issues of invasive species, trash, and managing appropriate access, perhaps around and or through the wetlands itself. We did hear, sometimes they're trampling of plants that people don't know what they're walking through and just, make any kind and walk wherever they want to walk. There's always a concern that things that we do want to thrive maybe get injured or just trampled on. Of course, litter, invasive species, issues of runoff. I guess you could also say inundation. Again, I think sea level rise is going to be an issue in every one of these zones. And again, the management action here is to form an agreement with a qualified nonprofit, culturally based community organization for the long-term stewardship of the wetland. So again, the future actions, kind of again, the basic is minimal stewardship conditions, weeding, collecting of litter, to a maintenance and care, which is trying to remove as many invasive species, managing and mitigating erosion, to then starting to look at restoration of the wetland to try and revegetate and prioritize which plants should be ideal in terms of the habitat, and working with other folks that are qualified to help guide that restoration process. And then once we get through a process of restoration, then how does the wetland itself as a living environment become a center point for island-based education? So again, similar to zone one, and again, these will be sort of constant questions is, for everyone on the conversation tonight, what kind of activities do you think should occur in this wetland zone that's appropriate? What kind of skills would you see and experience should someone that's going to take care of the wetland specifically? And I'm not saying that's just one area, we're just trying to kind of focus zone by zone, but what kind of experience and expertise should a community partner have in caring for this wetland system? And what kind of activities would you folks want to see here? And I know in some of our individual conversations, people have already shared their mana'o and ike, but again, because this is a beneficiary consultation, we're trying to open up the floor for perhaps those who have never participated in a previous conversation to share any thoughts that they may have tonight. So again, I will pause here, and again, through our process of either doing your virtual hand up or in the chat, we welcome questions or comments on this. And I see Liko with her hand up first. So Liko, please.
Thank you. Well, basically, I don't want them to have a real big focus on the wetlands to the point where, the engineering department gets involved and it becomes, this whole big thing that keeps us away. I think it's nice to be an educational, where people understand the benefits and the good of having a wetlands. It's supposed to be like a sponge that, soaks up the extra water that overspills in different areas, although it would be so nice if we had plenty water. We haven't had a lot of water lately, so it hasn't needed to be used, but good to have education on the area and not to the point of being a restricted place where it would affect everything else around, because when the government and the Corps of Engineers get involved, it becomes, hey, sorry, it becomes, this whole big animal. So I just kind of wanted to make mention about that.
Okay. Thank you. No, not at all. Anyone else have thoughts on?
Okay, so you heard our big dream, right? Same thing with the wetland. We stopped. All that pickleweed is totally invasive. If you want to restore that wetland, all of that has to go. It doesn't belong there. I don't see any native plants in that area except down by the old courthouse had some nice native akulikuli, a beautiful stand of it, but not in the immediate area behind us. It can be a really beautiful wetland. My big pipe dream was, and I've already talked to I talked to Arleon, who's considered one of the the experts in Hawaii about wetlands and has, you know, thousands and thousands of hours and experience in wetlands. I mean, she does jobs for the county and the state, you know, they trust her.
Mhm.
And she's come down and she said she would even help us. We've talked to other businesses and stuff on Molokai that would help us with equipment and volunteer to pull out invasives and get native plants back in there and planted. Of course, if you're going to restore something like that, you have to do predator control. So there would have to be fencing to keep out the predators, because you don't want to start putting native plants back in there and getting all the birds all excited and they come and all the mongoose and everybody wrap them, right? So, you know, we have given serious thought to this. We know we have to do predator control. We need to bring back the native plants, and we know what plants belong in there. And the pickleweed is not one of them. And then, you know, we've done so much education on wetlands down there, even if it's not a viable working wetland. I mean, even if it's a devastated wetland right now, we have still been able to use it to teach about wetlands. And can you imagine if it was like restored?
Right.
And so, you know, we saw a little, you know, we saw it fenced up, and we saw like boardwalk going through and signage, and that's a dream, you know. I mean, and the possibilities are endless, and it could be a beautiful educational place. And we even talked to the oil company when they came down, and you know, they're looking. Remember when they had the whole oil thing going on, and they have monies to restore, you know, devastated areas, and they were very interested in investing in that as well. I mean, but like I said, right now we can't do anything, you know, so hands off. Wait for the plan. And so, but we've done research, we've looked into it, we've talked to the professionals, the people that know about these things, and we have a dream, and who would take care of it? Well, maybe the canoe club will. Maybe we can get our club to volunteer and do maintenance once it's put in. I don't know. We have to work all of that out. But
thank you.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I mean, you said a lot of rich things in there, which we're capturing here in terms of research and you know, predatory control. So I think we just really want to pull that out. And again, thank you, Auntie, for your patience with us. I know you've shared that with us, I think, one-on-one a couple of times. So we're making sure we're covering all our bases. But really, from here, we're trying to push to then we're going to document this and move forward on some of the action strategies. Anyone else on this? Because again, I'm looking at our time. It's 7:05. We have our meeting to 8 o'clock, and we do have some other things to talk about. So if it's okay, again, I'm gonna unless I see someone posing a question here, I'm gonna move on to the next zone. But we always can come back to talk about things. Oh, Bridget, please. I think I saw your hand up, Bridget. Aloha.
I gotta unmute every time.
There you go.
You know what? I'm so sorry. I didn't even know. You know, I don't know that area and how it's all broken down. And this is the first meeting I've ever come to.
Okay.
But you know what? Like Penny was saying, that it's the wetlands. It catches, you know, the water that comes from Mauka. And I've been down there because I go look for uhaloa sometimes, because it's not, you know, it's clean. It's not getting all the dirt and stuff like that. But it's very, very dry. So we haven't had water there for a long, long time. And I don't know if anybody realized, but hey, this evening, Kapaki, I had water. We had rain, but very little. But so for me, the wetlands, I think we got to go move around the others. I don't know, or prepare it for the waters that's supposed to come during climate change. You know, prepare for what's going to be happening. But there's maybe other areas that need more attention right now. I don't know. Just my manana.
No,
just
thank you. Very good. Very good. Thank you, Bridget. And I also want to take a quick opportunity to just welcome mahalo, Councilmember Rollins Fernandez. Thank you for making time to join us this evening as well. Just want to acknowledge your presence and thank you for being here. I also want to aloha. I also want to make sure we have, I think, one attendee this evening on the phone, and Kalamai, I didn't offer an opportunity, but the person with the on the phone line 213-5091. If not sure if you had anyone to share about the last zone or this zone, but if you do, I want to make sure I give you time. And if not, that's fine too. We can come back for more talk story when you're ready.
No, that's okay. I was able to log on.
Oh, okay.
Because I got disconnected.
Okay.
But no, I'm good.
Thank you. Just making sure. We said we would take things in order, make sure we try to be as inclusive as possible.
Kavika, can I just say something real quick too?
Yes.
You know, the word wetland, people expect to see water. And wetlands, they go through, they're seasonal, just like everything else. And just because you don't see water on the top, that doesn't mean it's not a wetland anymore. It has, it's designated by the amount of water that's saturated in the ground, and they cord that area, and it is indeed a valid wetland. And wetlands wetlands are found on the entire South Shore of Molokai, and they have a role in our environment. It doesn't only collect water, the water that passes through there gets filtered. It captures toxins that's in the water before it enters the ocean. The wetlands have a valid role in our environment. It's part of the ecosystem. It's part of the spokes in the wheel, But, we've lost a lot of our wetlands to development, and because it's all between the coast, the ocean and the land. So, roads have been built to it. It's been filled in. But wetlands, when people hear the word wetland and they don't see water, they're like, why is it a wetland? Well, just because the more visible water, it's still a wetland.
Right. Thank you. There's a question, and I'm going to lean on my two colleagues here. I'm not sure if they know the answer immediately offhand. Again, we studied the area, and Janice here did part of that biological study. There's a question from Ahupua'o Molokai asking, do we know how many acres of wetland are on the county side? So I'm not sure if we can quantify what we think is the wetland in full and what portion therein is on the county side. I'm not sure if Janice or Cody, you know that off the top of your head. If not, then we may have
a
to.
quick measurement, and it's about 1/3 of an acre on the county side.
About 1/3 of an acre. Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. So we're gonna again holo naue to the next zone, which is we just call it the Malama platform. So again, site of the historic platform. The platform may have been used or utilized, as we understand, as part of traditional heiau. The platform was utilized as a site of Kapuaiwa, Kamehameha V's fishing lodge, and the Molokai Canoe Club actually cares for the site on a voluntary basis. So as Wa'akapaimua does for the wetland, Molokai Canoe Club does for this Vahipana. The management opportunities, protection and restoration of cultural resources for present and future generations. And secondary issues include just ensuring, landscaping and irrigation of the ground surrounding the platform. Again, invasive species control and removal, because sometimes when you have things sort of poking through the pohaku, it can have an effect on the structural integrity of the platform itself. And then things like trash and controlling access and parking. Again, as mentioned, the kiawe trees and other species growing on and around through the platform and can threaten the structural integrity, inundation and erosion, litter and vandalism. Again, the pending threats here beyond sea level rise, there is a question about, well, without sort of appropriate management and care, there's sort of a natural deterioration that can occur. So the risk of deterioration and negligence, this particular site could be impacted in the long term. So again, the management strategy to formalize an agreement with a qualified nonprofit, culturally based community organization for the long-term stewardship of this Vahipana. And the range of action starting on the minimal side is again this sort of the daily maintenance or weekly, monthly maintenance of weeds and rubbish around the area. Looking to do more formalized maintenance and care of the site. And then, a conversation we've heard, some people want to understand this site better. So doing formal archaeological studies to a certain depth, doing test trenching, maybe doing a field school here to gather more archaeological information. So they figure out how best to restore and what are we actually restoring to. So this gets into very much more culturally oriented discussions, both on a passive purpose, just to restore to a state of integrity, that the site is visibly seen and understood, and do you do signage? And then to the highest level we see would be sort of an investigation and then response for purposes of adaptive reuse. How do we bring this site back to life, make it a central portion of Wahipana-based education, and perhaps that's already happening on site, as I understand. How do we restore certain cultural practices to this aina? I think I saw something in the chat earlier that maybe one consideration was doing, would it make sense somewhere, perhaps more Mauka, to even have a pavilion where these cultural exchanges can take place, right? Maybe you need a staging area for the keiki or whoever's coming to service the area to come and get oriented, and then actually do the work and care within the Wahipana itself. So that's the setup of this zone. Again, asking the same kinds of questions: what kind of activities should occur in this platform area, to what extent, and what kind of skills do you see and experience should a future community partner have in the care of this Wahipana, and what additional activities and uses do you see being appropriate for this zone? So again, I'll open up the floor to anyone that would like to share their mana'o. Okay. Are we feeling okay with these range of alternatives? Is there a desire by, I guess maybe to ask directly to folks from the Molokai Canoe Club, an interest to do more physical restoration of the site, or to do more archaeological study of the site? Is that something of interest? Okay, maybe this one we got to think about a little bit. Okay. And again, this is not the only time we can chime in here. Again, the Google Forms, which we shared in the chat, we're going to share that form again. Cody, maybe we can post it in a couple of times here so people can just get access to it. If you think of things you want to share and say on any one of these zones, please go ahead. I'm going to continue to then, without seeing any questions or comments right now, I'm going to move to the fourth zone, which is, again, this is not necessarily the shape of what this zone will be like when it's awarded, but we're just kind of talking about in general. So it's everything from the wetlands and the platform, Mauka up, but not inclusive of the parking area. So here we have a lot of information. There is an open green space with what was meant to be a stage and amphitheater. The area is covered with grass and sparse trees. So I heard a comment about maybe having more trees in this area. There are historic sites here. Technically, they're defined as historic sites in terms of the dilapidated jailhouse, the way station, and there is what we call this subsurface horizon cultural layer. There is existing irrigation and electrical system that's no longer in use. There is a wastewater line that does cross the site from Kaunakakai Place to the comfort station. That's on actually the adjacent county old portion of the park. And there is what we call an informal memorial dedicated to the life of this gentleman here who passed away. And actually, we come to understand that the ohana of this gentleman, Mr. Coelho, stewards this area on a volunteer basis, just a small portion of this area 4. This is an area I think that's quite underutilized and could perhaps be the center of a lot of community building opportunities. There would be a need to do landscaping and irrigation, invasive species control and removal, trash and security. And then the threats, there is a question on the structural integrity of the jailhouse. We've actually heard through different conversations a desire to remove the jailhouse. But because it's a historic property, we would have to go through a more formal process to document that jailhouse with the State Historic Preservation Division, and then move towards then its removal. Litter and vandalism are a concern. We've heard concerns about illegal camping, maybe say in terms of utilization by homeless and houseless community. And then some concern about the adjacent uses, more Mauka, that this area could be subject to some soil contamination, so that have to be further evaluated and understood. Sea level rise is a pending thread here as well. And no different than the other actions. So really, as you kind of see the consistency, we're looking to form an agreement with someone that can step up, and we need to spend some time talking about what those models could be, but with a qualified organization for the long-term use and stewardship of the area. So the future actions alternatives for the historic sites, we would need to follow the process provided by SHPT to remove the jailhouse, and potentially could keep the way station for some adaptive reuse. Again, maybe hearing from folks, what do you think that could be? We come to understand part of it has been used presently for sort of community art. Maybe we could formalize that if that's a desired use here. And then really the actions relative to the bathroom facility, it could be installation of portable toilets provided and maintained by a private vendor, installing composting toilets that have to be maintained by a vendor and or a nonprofit, and then to the extreme, constructing a new bathroom facility connected to the existing county sewer line. That comes with a lot of costs, construction, permitting, et cetera. So those are the thresholds for the bathroom facility. I know probably people are saying, well, why can't we just connect to the county side? And that's actually, I mean, it's a great question as we come to understand at present right now with DPR. That's not something that really is viable at this time, but we could also put it into the documentation of the plan. And then the other elements for action are landscaping. Again, just maintaining the area, weed whacking, tree trimming, maybe doing some limited watering of the plants that are there now, looking to maybe plant and Malama native trees and shrubs that are appropriate, to then restoring a full irrigation system for ensuring proper watering and care of the new landscape that would be put in. Last, use of space for community functions. There could be the utilization of the space for example, one-time events like a festival or a concert. There could be routine scheduled events like discussed with some folks about a weekly farmers market or a craft fair that happens seasonally or periodically. And then to the idea of an everyday use, having a presence of classrooms or even a concession stand on the site. And so again, I'll pause here. The questions are the same. What kind of activities do others here see potentially being used here in the zone? I think what we heard earlier, potentially, if that idea for some picnic tables, question about barbecue pits, that introduces a whole nother question on insurance and care and cleanup of that, fire management, that kind of thing too. But again, I want to hear from you folks tonight as to what you see as appropriate activities or activities you would like to see. What kind of skills and experience should a future community partner possess here for this zone? And what other activities you could see fitting for this area? Anybody with questions?
I just want to say in the past, when it was, still kind of nice, our canoe club did use the bathrooms, and we even volunteered to clean it. I know I went during the canoe season and cleaned it regularly. We've done that in the past. There were weddings there. There have been I know Claire, the Youth in Motion, has had their big events there. I know there was a question about the hula mound, and that mound that's not a dedicated hula mound. I think it was just built for that purpose, to be like a stage. I know some mounds are like dedicated, and then that's, you have to be careful how you use it, but that's not one of them. Now that it's back to the homestead, I can see this as a place where the homesteaders could come and hold their Saturday markets. They could have, they could use it like how they use Kiawea Park for large gatherings or family events. We could have community events there. I was involved with the George's film, Hawaiian Soul. That would have been a good place to show the film in the evening, right by the water, on homestead land. The possibilities are endless. But, there's always that question as who pays the bills and who's in charge of it.
Right. Which, we're going to be sharing those ideas, here in a second, at least the concepts, looking for actually specific individuals or groups to want to be that organization. Thank you, Auntie Penny. Anybody else? There's a question. Oh, sorry, Kalamai, please.
That's right. Yeah, we did have ideas of the park as it was used in the past, and it had been discussed when Walter Reedy was running the whole phases, for it to be like a community gathering place, like more of a natural setting, like not so much for parties like Michipole, but like an outdoor gathering when they have like entertainment and everybody can sit around and watch, because the way they made the landscape, it was like, it's kind of like you have a low portion in the stage, and then you have it kind of inclined, so it's like you sit around, like an amphitheater kind of thing, and watch the entertainment and have like booths, like how we're right now presently having that Nawahine thing in town, closing out the streets, something like that would be beautiful there, but there isn't lights either in that area. There isn't any lights, and the bathrooms aren't working, and the whole water situation is a problem. But and as far as having a group, our last discussion when we were talking with AOM and having a hui, that was sounding promising. But we just, again, as you were discussing in the beginning about being respectful of one another, and in all our ideas, and that's why it's good to like have that hui, be a representation from different interested parties of the park area to get together and set some things in motion, have a vision for the park, and then from there decide how we would like as a community to have it run.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, that's just my manao. And there was beautiful trees, but because of the whole leakage, the water, and nobody was taking responsibility to continue to maintain the park, and pay the bill for the water, that all the poor trees died. So I know that can happen again because they grew once, it can be beautiful again. Yeah.
Well, on that sentiment, I kind of like it that those monkey pod trees died because they're big. They're a big straw. They take a lot of water, and there's other trees that take less water that can pretty much, once they're established, kind of grow on their own, really, with very little watering, that belong in that area. So I agree, it was beautiful, the trees, but I like what you said earlier about getting appropriate vegetation in the area so that it's more of a natural landscape than a forced one, and get plants that belong in that area, that have that's what they're designed for, to survive in those kind of climates with little irrigation, and that would contribute to solving the water problem as well. But yes, Liko, the trees were beautiful, and we know that they can grow because they grew once before. So I don't know.
Oh, this is all good, Manao. There's a question in the chat. Isn't the archaeological site Kapu? I guess with Pat, I'm not sure if you're talking about Malama platform. Arguably, you could say that is Kapu, or it's important, and especially there is a cultural layer, as we call it, that was identified during a previous archaeological study. So one thing would be mindful is anything that would happen here that would require potentially subsurface excavation, new construction, would probably require consultation with SHPE, and then probably doing some proactive study, if you will, to ensure that whatever might be important in that layer can be identified. Again, I don't know the full details, but oftentimes it could be everything from midden, lithics. It's just the archaeological layer of the presence of our kupuna doing activities in this area that still could exist, but to the best of my knowledge, it's not necessarily physical features per se, but it could be tangible elements of their presence, if that makes any sense. Charcoal bits and et cetera, et cetera. So yes, there would have to be, as part of any, I think, improvement in this zone, doing some cultural studies. So again, I'm going to nudge here because I realize it's now almost 7:30, and we do have this whole section on the management strategies to present, and I definitely want to leave time for that. So the parking zone, you could argue, well, it's a small area. It's just about parking. It's about 2,000 square feet here off of Hilo Place. There are large pohaku there that have been placed along the Makai edge to prevent boat parking, and there are no bicycle parking facilities. I think that someone mentioned about, would it be cool to actually have maybe a bicycle station or paths and whatnot. Primary issue is making sure there's adequate parking and access for visitors. Secondary issues, abandonment of vehicles, which happen from time to time. And of course, always the management of the opala. There is some issues in the past of abandonment of vehicles and boats. And again, the same concern relative to soil contamination from adjacent uses will probably need to be addressed. Sea level rise again, and really from a management action strategies to expand allowable parking area and controlled access. And by controlled access, would it be, is this area open 24/7? Is there a gate with a chain that's, the park is open from 7 to 7, or, something like that in terms of how we just maintain this area. So for a range of actions, similarly, just care of the site, maintenance care could be repaving as needed, maintaining perhaps rubbish bins that are located there, addressing any erosion issues, and then kind of tiering up, improving and expanding the allowable parking area for public use, and perhaps even thinking about, would you want to expand this area to allow for boat parking? And open up the floor for conversation on the parking zone here. Any thoughts?
Well, currently we have a 20-foot container that is there that houses our Molokai Canoe Racing Association equipment, things that belong to all the clubs.
Okay.
So we kind of took it upon ourselves, since everybody was like just laying out their boats and whatever parking things there. And we figured that would be a neutral place to put our equipment housing thing. So yeah, that one container there belongs to Molokai Canoe Racing Association.
Okay.
But I don't like the boats there. Sorry.
Nope. Again, we're just posing questions and good feedback. Anybody else? Okay, I'm gonna nudge. So this is where we would have taken a 5-minute break, but for sake of time, I'm gonna keep going. But again, all of us, if you need to, take a bio break or check on your keiki or your makua, whatever is appropriate, please feel free to step away. We're gonna continue on though. So, some of the things we've heard through these conversations, what we heard tonight as well, I think kind of validate that. When we think about, okay, without putting names to organizations or individuals, although that's very apparent this evening, who the groups are that at least have a presence now, but also we want to literally open space for future presence of other interested parties to maybe take on other parts of the park. Is that, first and foremost, the kuleana we would see being important is the protection and care of the aina itself through the natural and cultural resources. The management kuleana of an organization would be that they would be clear to identify and evaluate volunteer projects that they would want to undertake. And of course, that would go through an approval process with the chichel. And again, we will speak to that in probably the next slide or two as to what that should be like. In conversations with other entities and individuals who have worked with organizations relative to the care of other kinds of parks, typically they say the two things that sort of garner the success or sort of ensure the success of an organization is, one, having a strong volunteer base, and two, having the capacity to raise funds. So the third point here is that this organization or organizations, I should say, should have the ability to fundraise for projects and improvements. They have capacity within their own rank and file to organize and direct the projects. They can garner and oversee and monitor a volunteer base. And of course, we can't have any discussion about doing things, on publicly owned lands without talking about insurance, assurances of insurance for liability purposes, And then really, we heard it tonight too, like, who is going to take on the both short-term and or long-term maintenance repairs to ensure primarily public use and access as well as safety. And then lastly, that more than likely, this organization would need to somehow report back, sort of evaluate the success of the program and project and be able to report back to DHHL. So, that's the kuleana we see here. And so what does this thing look like? And we're going to show here, there's words here on this page. I'm going to tie the words to sort of simple diagrams. We see 4 strategies, really. And again, we've heard this through conversations. 1, you could have a single entity managing the entire park and its resources. And there's pros and cons. We'll get into that in just a moment. You could have then a single umbrella organization that then coordinates the care and management of the park with other organizations. But at the end of the day, DHHL would be working with one organization and they could maybe work with and network with a bunch of smaller organizations. Then the third option would be multiple entities with delineated areas and defined responsibilities. And that's a little bit of what we see today, right? With the 2 canoe clubs taking care of their immediate areas, but also some of these resource areas. And then the fourth would be kind of similar to the third, but a little bit different in that you have multiple entities, each with a specialized expertise and managing dedicated resources throughout the entire park. And it's probably better if I show that through a graphic form, but in short, it could be an organization that just wanted to take care of all the historic and cultural resources, or take care of one specific thing that has a very specific expertise. Bringing in the wetland expert and having I'm making this up, but like having a network with a partnering ecosystem specialist to just take care of the wetlands itself, or the wetlands and its connective. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. The connective elements that make the wetlands from Kai to Mauka. So again, this simple graphic form, right? Managing the park, you have this entity A that's going to Malama that whole rectangle. The rectangle is the park. B would be A is in charge. They're the ones that will have sort of the agreement with DHHL. But then you could have entity B taking care of the canoe club or coastal area and the wetland, and then C taking care of, say, like the farmer's market, right? But A ultimately has that kuleana to be the managing entity. And then the third version here is having, A taking care of the farmer's market, B taking care of the canoe club, and C taking care of the wetlands. Where that's kind of how it is informally today, right? Everyone's got sort of their area of responsibility and kuleana. And then fourth would be sort of more of this, I won't say a hodgepodge, but definitely you have the park as a whole, and you could have an entity wanting to take care of specific areas or specific resources, or just wanting to do one small thing once a year with a festival, right? So it could be multiple entities here, taking on different roles in care and responsibilities. So when we look at these four sort of strategies, if you will, there's some pros and cons, right? So I'm going to go through this. And again, this is a lot of words. And again, please start to pose questions in the chat if you have questions, and we can talk about this. For the management area, again, for a single entity, well, I guess I'll go for each strategy. So a single entity, you have one organization for the whole park. They're responsible for the management of the entire park and its resources. The pros to this is that it's simple, at least from the standpoint of DHHL and Land Management Division, that there's only one organization that DHHL will be working with and a single point of contact. The challenges therein is, the park is a large area with a lot of responsibilities, as we discussed, some pros and cons about the different zones, and the diverse resources may be difficult for one organization to manage it all. So although it does come with the simplicity of just working with one group's taking it on, it could be, it's too much for any one group. The umbrella strategy, again, is pretty similar, as I shared in the diagrams, to have one management entity, but could be helping to oversee other folks, doing things within the park itself. The one entity is responsible for overseeing and managing these volunteer organizations. Again, advantage is it's one point of contact. The subgroups, or the groups that fall under the umbrella, are freed up to focus on just their kuleana or just their space. They don't have to worry about the entire park. But it will require coordination efforts, with that umbrella organization, with these multiple organizations. It's something to think about. Then multiple entities with delineated areas. That's sort of the model that's there now in present form, informally, where you have multiple management areas with clearly defined boundaries, right? This is our canoe club. This is the wetland we're going to take care of. Kuleana is responsible for a particular area within the park. The advantages, again, smaller area will be more manageable, and you can avoid conflicting priorities and interests and projects between volunteer groups, right? This is where we play in, work in, set Kuleana. But we also know too, there are these natural overlaps of responsibility. So that's something to ask too. And again, it will require then the department at least having to then coordinate an effort with multiple organizations. So it's a little bit more time and effort on their part, and working with each of these groups to effectively care for the areas of their interest. The last strategy is, again, it could be multiple locations within the park itself or particular resources. Some management areas may be incontiguous, meaning it could be different parts of the park and overlap. The volunteer Kuleana, you could maintain a specific park feature, facility, or resource. The advantage is you have individual resources being managed holistically by specialized organizations. And the challenge there is, again, it's requiring a lot of coordination with many multiple organizations with maybe multiple areas of interest within the park. And there is potential in that model for conflicting priorities. So I'm going to stop there for a moment and again, putting up these 4 management strategies. Again, we're not asking, well, I guess I think we do ask in the Google form, is there a preference? But again, these are the 4 strategies that, we're not saying we want to do one or the other, but we think based upon other models would work, could work. They come with pros and cons. Again, I would like to stop my talking for a little bit to offer up, folks to offer up comment as to what you think would make the most sense here, even here in the short term or looking long term. So are there any thoughts on any of these 4 strategies?
I like how it's been run, but
Okay.
which is more like the multiple entities with delineated areas.
Mhm.
But again, I still, because we're individual clubs and stuff, we still want to be part of the whole,
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, not sure how. I mean, again, kind of something like what we was talking about the last one, where we were looking at a nonprofit, that would run, I guess, the A portion, which would then consist of a hui that would be community people, different community, involvement, to have that hui, so that it's not like just one person deciding
Right.
how. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, that one, in how it was running, was because then it wouldn't make sense for the whole to be concerned about the different areas in that multiple entities one that we're currently doing, because basically, besides the cleaning of those resources, like the mound and those different zones, that I would say should be in the whole, because then when we work together as a community to get the place maintained and stuff, I think our specific area, we would be fine. Like currently, we tend to do fine by ourselves without anybody having to worry about doing our portion. But in the areas where we've been, like, we stepped out of our area to, help Malama, the area around us, to give back. That was basically our give back. So that if that area would be included with the whole park, in maintenance, then that would be one less worry for, the clubs, and it would be more of an involvement with the community. Um, that's anyway my thought on that.
No, and those are great points. And I think too, this plan should, I don't think there's like one single
size fits all.
yeah, and one single answer. So maybe the short term is because the way it is now, it is this multiple entity. But to your point, there could be over time as other individuals or organizations steps forward to say, hey, yeah, I want to become involved here. And maybe over time, it does make sense for different reasons down the line that the plan should be able to speak that this could evolve into, going from, say, a multiple entity with delineated areas to then maybe an umbrella entity. But that may not happen until there's capacity or interest, and that could happen in a 3 to 5 year time frame. Well, this plan shouldn't wait till 3 to 5 years for that to happen. We could start here with the multiple entity version and say that it could evolve to one of these other things over time, and that the plan should reflect a periodic updating evaluation at a certain point to see is this effective, is it working in terms of the current model. Yeah, so
exactly, because it's in community involvement, how much people want to put into it, and it just morph into something even better,
Right.
like how you said, with change. I can, like right now it's been working, but in the future maybe something would come across, to make it even better. I don't, I'm not knocking that. It's just that like right now it's working, so I like
Okay.
that.
The umbrella, and
Oh, Penny, please. I thought she was going to say something.
Sorry, Auntie Penny, you're on mute in case you're speaking right now.
oh, I wasn't earlier, but I thought I interrupted somebody, so you guys muted me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt anybody.
No, please.
I like the umbrella entity. That looks interesting because you have the group that will take on that administrative kuleana, and it's like you have this umbrella and you can go, and then the B's and the C's under that can still maintain their kuleana, but you have this A group that will handle all that business part of it, the administrative part of it, Does that make sense? Am I looking at the umbrella correctly?
Yep.
Yeah, so if, say, we wanted to, so I'm guessing that this A group would have a 501c3 and they would have paid executors in place, to do all the paperwork that's required to run something like this. And then we would basically like report to them and work together with them so that we can maintain our areas, which falls into their larger area. And then anybody else that wanted to come in and do something in the park, or volunteers to come in, it would be like, they're all covered under this umbrella.
Right, exactly. And I guess the question is, absent of identifying the specifics of who that, and so the plan, I think, could speak to each of these strategies, and it will, I should say. I guess the practical side of it is like, okay, well, right now we do have sort of this model in place, and I would, contend to say it's more the multiple entity strategy. Like, do we start from there, and then as things evolve formally, that maybe in the future an umbrella organization would be identified if one is not identified now, if we don't know.
So it looks like the umbrella looks like a combination of this, the single and the multiple. I mean, the multiple is working right now for the canoe clubs,
right,
but the park is suffering,
Right.
So, and I think, when people look at the canoe clubs, they see us as separate from the park, but we're not. We're still a part of that whole area. We're a piece of the pie, right? And so the umbrella one keeps us like a piece of that pie, but we're still like able to do our kuleana, and malama our area. And then you have this this A group that we could probably get insurance through them and all kinds of stuff, through that A group.
Right, and I think there was a question, I thought I saw somewhere about having, the ability to raise funds, right? So you have one organization that's sort of focusing on the strategy of raising capital.
Right. So,
Or not.
well, the Canoe Clubs, we are a nonprofit. We're able to raise funds. We have, the Molokai Canoe Racing Association is covered under HCRA's insurance, that kind of stuff. But if you're talking about the park as a whole, and us just a part of that whole, then for the whole area, I think the umbrella entity might be a good idea. I don't know, Liko, what do you think?
If what you are worried about is the administration portion, we had no problem talking straight to DHHL. So in the multiple entity one, it worked out fine. If we had any kind of situations that we needed to run past DHHL, we would just make the call to whatever person would be in the lead on the DHHL side, and present whatever we were looking at wanting to do or something, and we would work together with DHHL. So I like the multiple entity because that's how we've been running, and it's never been a hard thing to manage on our area anyway.
Right, it's not difficult for us either, and when we have problems, we go to DHHL as well.
Exactly. So it's
But
easy enough.
what I'm hearing from DHHL is, if you're not looking just at our area, but as a park as a whole, they're not wanting to be that person.
No, they're not.
Correct.
Right.
We're creating a community hui to do this. And when you mentioned paid position, I don't know. I don't
No,
foresee.
but I'm saying some of the groups that have offered to be that group to meet with the community and stuff, they do have paid positions in their nonprofit.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying if whoever is in the nonprofit writes it that way, then that could be something, that they
So,
could.
I don't have a problem with the way things are now, except, things have been put on hold as far as putting any, like entering the wetlands or pretty much doing anything. I feel like we're in limbo right now. Things are good, but we're in limbo. And we're looking at this not just at the canoe clubs, but the whole park is what I'm understanding here. And
Right.
so what they want is somebody to take up the staff, and DHHL doesn't want to be that entity. They want somebody else to do pretty much what they're doing now for us. We're calling them with our problem, or can we do this, that. They don't want to be that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I think that when I'm looking at the umbrella one, it's kind of like you have somebody that will take over that kuleana of what DHHL is doing now, but we can still do what we're doing now under that umbrella. Does that make sense?
I don't really understand the umbrella one, to be honest.
To me, the umbrella one is just the A would be DHHL. What they're doing for us now, the A would be doing. And then we're under them, and we do our thing, and we work together with them in our area of the park, and the other people that come into other areas of the park will work with them as well. But they oversee the whole thing.
And I think the intent, sorry, I was going to interject to say, and I think that, the idea of the A here, although it could be interpreted with DHHL, but given the focus on homesteading and what you've, said in different ways, is that A would be some yet to be identified community hui that's going to be the main interface with DHHL. And Perlene or Andrew, you want to chime in on this in terms of department's perspective and park rules? If not, that's fine too. But that's the idea. So I think, again, the plan would want to document sort of the existing conditions now, and I think trying to formalize what you folks are doing there now, and saying that this is existing conditions, and therefore to move forward to disposition, which is, I'm trying to respect people's time. So it's 7:52, and I do have one last slide to share. actually there's 2 more slides, but actually it's just about where we are in the process. This one too could take some time to sort of digest, but once we identify, okay, sort of the strategy, so regardless if it's multiple entity and or this umbrella, you know, how we get there. And again, I'm going to be the first to say I'm not the expert on this, but I'm going to try to present this slide, but I'm going to lean heavily to, I think Shelly's on the call from DHHL that, you know, please course correct me where I'm wrong. But at present, you know, with the various options of disposition that exists within DHHL structure at present, that we see as relative to the park, that we could do this in one of 4 ways. One is through a general lease nonprofit, a license, and a right of entry. And I think I'm going to start from more right to left. So with the right of entry, and again, what we're showing here in this table is, you know, what is that authority in terms of the rules and regulations and laws, the nature of interest of why we would use that disposition option, what would be the purpose of that, the duration of it, is there competition when that solicitation or for that opportunity to take on something, you know, comes into play, and is there a 343 or an environmental review compliance component, and what are some examples? So the right of entry, right, is a right to enter upon the land for a specialized purpose. It's usually very specific. It usually is a short-term, month-to-month renewable, or month-to-month and renewable annually. There is direct negotiation with the department, and typically the type of activity can be exempt, and it's only exempt with the uses being a permitted or allowable use. And it could be a way or means of getting to a longer term disposition, or it is a means of present to get to a longer term disposition via a license or general lease. The license would be, again, showing the authority, personable, revocable, non-assignable right, not considered an interest in the land for public purposes. It's usually perpetual or a specified term, usually a longer duration than the right of entry. Again, direct negotiation. It too, as a license, could be exempt if within a right-of-way covered by a previous EA or EIS. And examples could be educational, cultural programming, community use such as food truck, farmers market. Then the 2, you know, other options are these general leases, which look to establish a long-term presence, a maximum of 65 years. The general lease nonprofit is the right to exclusive use and possession for a definitive period of time for public purposes. Again, it's also direct negotiation. It does usually require project EA or EIS to comply with environmental rules, and it can be used for longer standing educational and cultural programming. And then the last one, or to the one to the far left, general lease is also a right to exclusive use and possession for definite period of time, for commercial purposes, again, long-term for maximum 65 years. That's typically through a public auction process. It's also typically subject to environmental review, and examples would be sort of standard commercial and or industrial uses. So this is where it could be, you know, having a longer term commercial presence or, you know, a vendor on site. So these are the 4 existing means of disposition at present. And again, maybe I'm going to lean here on my DHHL counterparts. I'm not sure if Shelly or Angie, if you want to expand upon these, provide some clarification on things I may have maybe not said enough clarity on. But this would be the means to getting to then the disposition of those strategies we talked about in the previous slide.
And I thank you, Kavika. I think just to explain the table, this is how, or these are possible options of how the department would implement one or more of the strategies that we were talking about earlier. So we just wanted to, at this point in time, for informational purposes, just to identify the potential implementation instruments that we would be using to implement one or more of the strategies that we were talking about in the previous slides. Right now, you know, we're not, you know, leaning towards one instrument over the other. It really depends on what strategy beneficiaries feel is applicable to the park. From what I've heard so far is that the existing strategy with multiple users seems to be working, but we should also be cognizant of the ability to grow into perhaps an umbrella organization with multiple entities under it in the future, as a longer term strategy, if that seems appropriate. So what I take away from that is that whatever disposition instrument we have, we should write it in a way that allows the opportunity to change course over time, should the community over time want to have that umbrella organization be the manager of the park with different types of entities under that umbrella organization. That's what I'm hearing so far. But
thanks, Andrew. And yeah, just, I mean, again, as the consultant working for DHHL, the add-on thoughts is, you know, you have the 2 canoe clubs, so perhaps, you know, it makes sense to look at potentially for them serving that role of the being 2 organizations, looking at either the license or general lease nonprofit option. Maybe in the future you could have someone coming in either to do a farmer's market short term, or maybe a festival event or something, where then they would come in with a right of entry for the Mauka area. So again, there may be, even in this near term, different ways to get folks to do the work that they need to do and formalize the structure and understanding of kuleana at the park here.
So you know, the multiple use, the way it is now, can it stay that way, which is ideal for us, and still have another group like AOM take the lead and fill in that A space in the multiple use chart?
That's an option.
Okay, and then this thing about the general lease where it says purpose commercial, has the DHHL at any time entertained this, like putting it out there?
I guess to answer that question, so for the commercial leases, if you look at the see on the table, it says competitiveness on one of the rows. So it says public auction. Yeah. So what it means is we wouldn't, because of state procurement laws, we wouldn't be able to direct negotiate with an entity. We would have to put it out for bid, and usually it's in a request for proposals, and we would specify what type of characteristics from the proposal that we would like to see from the perspective lessee.
I see. So if you put it out for bid, just this example, you could say, okay, we're going to put out for bid, but the canoe club's got to stay there.
We could do that, yeah.
And you can bid for the park part.
Yeah, yeah. We could say something like, you have to take the existing canoe clubs as they are, but you also have to show us what you're going to do for the park part and how you're going to raise funds, how you're going to manage the park area. So that could be an option if we were to go to that competitive format. The other formats are more direct negotiation. So if we were going to, and I'm just thinking out loud, if we were going to do the multiple users, we would probably prefer to do the do one of the options that we could direct negotiate with the existing entities.
I have one more question too. If things should get rolling and the park gets open and this is homestead land and stuff, how does it work with the public? You know, like Kiowa Park, you don't have to be a homesteader to rent it for the weekend. Lanikeha, you don't have to be a homesteader to rent it for luau. How is it going to work with this park?
I guess if there are, because in the other examples you gave, there are facilities, yeah, that people are renting, or they're setting us, they're renting facilities. Yeah, I think right now, currently there's probably not an existing facility on the park site for people to rent out. Should there be one in the future, I think it would be, well, we would probably work with the group that has the disposition over where, so let me start over again. If there's a facility in a particular area where a community partner has a disposition from the department to manage, we would probably work with that community partner to figure out a protocol and procedure to rent out that facility.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Question, with the purpose being commercial under general lease and public purpose for general lease nonprofit, we can, if we were under the general lease nonprofit, for instance, we still could do like Saturday market and stuff like that.
You could still pursue revenue generating type of activities, but you would have to show that the revenue generated is put back into a nonprofit use.
And so when you're talking commercial, what does that mean?
That means it could potentially go to someone that is a for-profit entity. So if they generated revenue, they would keep a portion of that as profit. It would, and I'm just thinking out loud, it might incentivize some people to invest in the management of the park if they knew that they could make a profit. But again, it doesn't sound like that particular instrument is, based on what the conversation has been so far, it doesn't sound like that particular instrument is the best.
So under the license one, then you could have the farmers, the homestead farmers coming and selling their produce and keeping their monies.
Could be.
You could have an event and charge for the event.
It could be. And yeah, that's a possibility. I think, well, again, I just wanted to emphasize that these are possible tools that we would be using to implement the strategies that we were discussing about earlier. Another thing about the tools are, you folks are probably familiar with, your homestead lease and whatever, there's conditions in your lease. Likewise, with these types of instruments, there would be conditions in those instruments that the department and the future prospective lessee or licensee, we would have that discussion about specific conditions that you would like to see.
So, when you asked us what we'd like to see happen there, I heard over and over that we would like to see like a Saturday market, space. We would like to see cultural events, maybe lahala weaving and, things like that. I think we need to, while we plan for those things and we plan a vision for the park, we need to understand these disposition options, because you come up with all this stuff and to find out that, it can't happen because it's not in the right option, or, you know what I'm saying? This like makes it all cloudy again. Like, wait, gotta go back up again and look at all of this to look at the plan again. You know what I mean? To see how our dreams, our vision falls into what space over here. Am I making sense?
I think I hear you. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
No, you go, because, yeah.
again, just a consultant here, but trying, me and Andrew, we're blessed to work together on some things. So Auntie Penny, I think I hear what you're saying, right? Maybe the concern is to pick one and then down the line something changes and you want to change strategy. Like, are you locked into like the terms and conditions? Like, again, I'm not the expert at all in this position, but there are people here that can help us figure this out, sort of mapping out, okay, well, maybe it makes sense for the existing conditions now with the two canoe clubs taking care of certain kuleana. I mean, you're there now. We want to make sure you're there in perpetuity, that perhaps, no need the right of entry. We start with a license and, have that license be defined for a certain period of time and, evaluate, I don't know if it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, that, as capacity grows, or again, maybe as the community buoys up and this umbrella organization comes to light, then maybe at that interval, it's looking to move toward the general lease nonprofit or commercial, depending upon the action activities, but to not be able to lock you in so where you can't do things in the future. So I understand what you're saying, that it's making it cloudy, but I think, what we want to do is make things pot now with what's happening now and identify these sort of paths, if you will, of being able to utilize the AINA and the resources and doing activities. That might take some creative thinking, I think, on all our parts, to not have any one entity locked in.
Well, because you're asking us, like, all this time you're asking us, even like if like the Hui that Liko was talking about, if we came together and had a vision for the park, all this time when we're talking about the vision for the park and planning and, throwing our dreams out there, I wasn't thinking about all this stuff and how this dictates that. You know what I'm saying?
I think
it's like, if you like do this, you got to look at this and see if it's possible, and where do you fall into these 4 spaces. And
I think we would look at it the other way, is if what are your dreams, and then what vehicle would best help achieve those dreams, instead of, oh, this is the vehicle, so we gotta change our dreams to fit the vehicle. So
because I'm thinking of those individual farmers that, like saying, wow, this would be like a place for us to bring our produce, and they're not non-profits, they're private individual homestead farmers that are trying to make a living,
Right.
So how do they fall into this?
So I think, well, a good example that I can think of is our on Hawaii Island, we have our Maku'u Farmers Association, and they run a really successful farmers market on Sundays. It's like the place to be in Puna on Sundays. They're a nonprofit. They run the farmers market, but they allow small for-profit vendors to participate in their market. So what I'm thinking out loud is that we'd probably look at something similar should there be strong community feedback.
I see. So come up with the vision and then go back and revisit this. And
yeah,
I was looking at it the other way.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. The purpose of this slide is really just to provide information about when we take the vision, we need to figure out a strategy. What's the best way to execute your vision strategically? And then within the strategy, how do we execute that? And these are the options for executing one or more of the strategy. So yeah, we just wanted to provide this for educational purposes, and so that when we do move down the road towards implementation, these types of terms and terminologies is a little bit more familiar. I mean, we don't expect everyone to remember everything about this, but at least there's that introduction of these ideas. So yeah.
And I think it would be fair to say what we heard tonight in terms of passions, uses, dreams could conceivably fall into one of these 4 categories once we get to that part of implementation. So it's not like something's out of the box where we're like, oh, we don't have a means to implement. in fairness. So it's 8:12, Kalamai. I think, not think, we said to 8 o'clock. Moving forward, so just bringing this back to close again. So here we are in this process, and part of it tonight, there's a lot of good feedback. We're going to move towards now sort of a documentation phase, provide that informational briefing back to commission, come back out to have some small group meetings, and maybe by then, in COVID restrictions might be lightening up. Maybe we can do some of these small group, halo on island, and then finalize that plan and getting ready for the final consultation meeting, which hopefully a lot of these things are sort of flushed out in full, so give opportunity to talk, and then head towards the final plan that would go to commission for approval. Again, folks that may not know where to get more information, this is a long website address. If you just type DHHL Malama Cultural Park in the Google search, it should take you straight to the website where you have information about tonight's meeting, all the previous meetings. You can participate again in the Google form. If you have additional material to share, there's an email, you can contact us. So that concludes our presentation.
Kavika, it's Kalamai. Can you go back to the other slide? I'm sorry, I know it's late.
Oh, yeah. No.
It's a minor thing. Your canoe, the ano gotta go on the other side because it was confusing what direction we was going. The ano is always on your left when you're moving forward. Yeah.
You are so
When I
right.
looked at it, I was going the other way. I was going back to the beginning.
Oh, see. Eagle eye. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, I feel embarrassed. That's funny.
I totally like you guys putting the canoe there, though. That's cute.
Yeah, I like the canoe there, but I was confused what direction we was going.
Mucka flip.
Mucka flipper, yeah.
Mucka flipper. Okay. That's it. I mean, we can stay on for a little bit longer, but again, I want to respect people's time, you being with your families. Thank you so much. I guess we want to offer Commissioner Helm any last thoughts too as well.
Kalamai, thank you so much. Oh boy, there's so much to discuss, and mahalo to all of the the speakers, and of course G70, Kavika and your staff, and Andrew, Perline, and Sherry, if she's there. Mahalo, but I had a whole bunch of things that I wanted to say, but I just can mention it later because I gotta have my dinner. I have opaka paka, steam opaka paka in my oven. I'm ready to charge it. But you know what? I want to support, as your commissioner, I want to support what is best for you and our community. But not only that, I've seen activities that's been at the canoe clubs for years, I mean, huge regattas, whether it's the Molokai Youth Regattas, whether it's Maui to Molokai Regattas, whether it's 1-man, 2-man, 6-man canoe races. I've seen that in action, and they've brought a lot of economic opportunities on Molokai. And I think, for me, we should protect and preserve what we currently have. And, and Malama, the wetlands, and of course, no need to change the course for that. But also continue to educate our OPO, but also to Malama and protect the King Kamehameha V platform. I think Molokai Canoe Club has done an excellent job in maintaining it on a regular basis. But for me, as a retired Parks and Rec administrator, I have experience in that field. So I'm aware of, what's best for a community. But what's unique about this park compared to DHHL parks on Molokai? You have Kiowa Park, you have Kapua Iwa Coconut Grove, you have Lanikea, you have Mo'omomi Pavilion. But this park because it's in a centralized area on Molokai, you know, it would be hard to, what do you call that, to not accept the general public. It should be continue to be open to the general public. So, you know, and also like when I say to, you know, continue to protect and preserve what we currently have, I mean like keep the Molokai canoe clubs in their current locations and keep them involved in the planning process, which they have done tonight. Penny and Liko. Reserve and maintain, and of course, our Kamehameha Fit platform. I believe this park is different from other parks, like I just mentioned, under the HHL. I would not go through extreme expenses to do major improvements to the park. I would build a restroom and outdoor shower facility on the park property rather than on the state property using County of Maui water and sewer. That's what I would recommend. Remove old courthouse and jail because of the unsafe conditions and liability. And then we really have to take a good look at that. Because if you drive there, you see it's falling apart. It's very, very dangerous. Okay, and there is a existing automatic irrigation system, but it's not in operation. So that needs to be fixed and install solar lighting in the around the park if we're going to utilize it 24/7. Plant native trees and native plants. You know, like Penny was saying that, you know, monkey pod is not a good good tree to plant because it absorbs a lot of water. And develop the parking area using gravel material. And I would also want to consider installing a 5-foot coating chain link fence alongside the east of the main road going to the pier, only because those big logs that someone had put there for a long time to keep traffic out of there, that can be unsafe, but it's also decaying in time because termites and stuff. So that's a safety issue. So that's got to be considered, at least that section. And when you put a, let's say a coated chain link fence, I would every 50 to 100 feet, I would have an opening so people can go in and out, like a 4 feet opening, a 5 feet opening. And then also I would keep everything else the same, you know, install rubbish containers around the park. We should not overdevelop this park. Have to consider global warming is here, increase in sea level erosions and king tide with the next 20 to 30 years. Malama Park will definitely be impacted. So to me, Hawaiian Homes associations with a 501c or canoe clubs with a 501c may be interested in doing the day-to-day maintenance of the park. Also, DHHL district staff may consider to handle daily maintenance, which will include removal of trash, cleaning restrooms, the restroom, and mowing, weed whacking in the park. Or contract Molokai Occupational Center would be another alternative, which they're doing that now for all of the Kalamaula streams and all the streams on Hawaiian homelands. They are contracted out as I speak. So that's an alternative. Considering hiring a security to monitor park during the evenings, because we may have issues with the homeless, you know. So to me, the biggest obstacle is liability. I mean, you know, I mean, you don't want to think about it, but it's going to be there, and who's going to be responsible if there is any, you know, issues. But that is my mana'o. But you know, having a Saturday marketplace, other activities, once that park is reestablished, I think that would be, but it's going to take time. But, I'm here to listen to, I wish we had more people in tonight's meeting, but, that's good. But the voices tonight was heard. Very excellent speakers, from Liko, Penny, and even what's her name? Sybil, and Cara, and Kapaakia girl, what her name? Miss Mawat. Yeah, all them. Thank you. So that's about it. So that's my manao for now. But it's a special place, but that's it.
Mahalo, Commissioner. Thank you. Andrew, I thought I saw your hand up, but maybe is he gone? Oh no, there he is.
It was up. I just wanted to just say one quick reminder. Even though we can't meet in person, Zoom does allow us to record tonight's meeting, and so the meeting recording will be posted on the DHL website, the same location where you folks use to access the link to get to the website. So all of the information that we presented will be there. Please share this with others that are involved with this special place. Tonight's not, you shared Mana'o tonight, but there's still opportunities for you to share Mana'o with us. There's a lot of information that we went over tonight. Take some time, give it some thought, review the presentation again, and give us some thoughtful feedback about some of the questions that we posed tonight. So yeah, just want to thank everyone for your time also. Thank you.
Mahalo, Andrew, and I see Council Member Rollins Fernandez hand up. Please, Council Member, thank you for being here. Excuse me.
Mahalo, Kavika. I just, Commissioner Helm just totally nailed it. And I just wanted to thank Commissioner Helm for just always being such a strong advocate for our community, and for, hearing all the voices and just like summing it up so perfectly. And I wanted to lend my support on the county side. However, I can help to try to collaborate on efforts to make Malama Park a success. It would be my privilege to do. So mahalo for this opportunity, and mahalo everyone for the very thoughtful discussion.
Thank you. All right. I guess that being said, this concludes this evening's meeting. Kia kua puia o ko, makapahia pau. Until such time we can meet together again. Be safe, be well, and thank you again for being here this evening. Aloha.
Night.
Aloha.
Good night. Enjoy your fish that.
Malama po na.
I will, Pele. I will.
That fish sounded good. I wish I was on Molokai.
I know, I got some salmon waiting for me too. I'm hungry. You made me more honor now for my food.